Having worked as a marketing consultant for brands like BMW and Audible, a B2C based business, customer acquisition is a lot simpler and easier than you might think. I'm going to share a lot of insights in this video, but there's a big assumption that I have is that your business or product has already found a customer fit or there's product market fit already. So some of the insights that I'll share isn't designed for startups or businesses trying to figure out if their business works. So there needs to be a sense of it working already for some of these to work. And the best way to really find that out is there must be organic demand. There must be demand for your product without paying a single cent, which is actually a lot more difficult, especially if you're a startup. The reason why I want to focus on B2C for this video is B2B business models and direct-to-consumer business models have slightly different approaches, although this video, some of the strategies and tactics you learn can really be deployed across any business model, right? So you'll see patterns that may help you if you work in B2B or direct-to-consumer. But I wanted to keep the video very concise. Without further ado, let's crack on. So let's talk about B2C first, right? B2C model is when you're a business that sells to an individual consumer, and that individual consumer has the power and the money to make the decision to buy it or not. You can think of companies like Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime. These are B2C models, right? You're selling to an individual. So B2C customer acquisition strategy, let's begin. The first part of a B2C customer acquisition strategy is all about customer awareness. So what this means is you have an understanding of who your customers are, where are you able to market to them? An acronym we use in marketing is the term ICP, which stands for Ideal Customer Persona. Another phrase you might hear is buyer avatar or buyer persona. And if we break that down further, where are your customers? Who are your customers in terms of demographics? Where are they potentially in the world? You need have some form of basis of where you can tap into before you even start marketing to them. These next few questions are really important to answer. What problems do they currently have that your business can solve? What are their current pain points? What goals or wants do they currently have that your business can also alleviate? So that's customer awareness. It's very basic, but a lot of businesses tend to forget about it, but that's really step one, right? There's no point us talking about tactics if you can't solve that first step of knowing your customers. All right, next is market awareness. So now you have an idea of your customers. Now you need to understand market awareness. And we're not talking about competitors here. We're just understanding if there's some form of demand for the product or service that you're selling. And we talked about at the beginning of the video that I'm assuming the business you're currently marketing for already has organic demand. So there's product market fit already, but I still want to talk about what this means. So some of the elements are understanding what's the current growth rate of this business, of this industry, right? What's the potential revenue that was gained in this specific business category from last year? Understanding the current growth rate and the current intricacies or news all about the business category that you're in. Next is a SWOT analysis, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. This is a very basic marketing framework, understanding you as a business. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities or levers that you have that can be better than your competitors? And then threats, right? What are potential variables or elements that can actually cause you issues down the line, not just in terms of marketing, but as a business as a whole. Part of this market awareness is understanding, what other products or services are out there that are in a similar vein. What's the pricing? Where are they advertised? How are they advertised? What's the creative messagings? What channels are being used to deploy some of the marketing they're doing? Which is then in very high correlation with a competitor analysis or competitor research, which is simply understanding who your competitors are, right? Think of Amazon, their competitor might be Alibaba or Temu. Let's say Apple, their competitor might be Google. It might be Samsung. Okay, so we have three fundamental elements of a B2C customer acquisition strategy. First is we know our customer. We have customer awareness. Second, we've done our market research, market awareness, so we understand the market that we're going to be playing in. Third is we understand our competitors. We've done some form of competitor analysis. The next and final stage of the strategy is now acquisition. So we're going to talk about growth acquisition channels and tactics now. Think about an acquisition strategy. There's three main channels that you're going to be in control of. You're going to have owned channels, you're going to have organic channels, and you're going to have non-organic channels. So when we talk about owned, these are channels that you own and that you've gained permission to market or sell to. So it's very likely people who have signed up or purchased from your business before. You have their email address, you have their data. They've given you permission to market and sell to them. That's a very basic channel. Next is organic. So these are channels where you can still sell to your customers or bring awareness, but you don't own the channel. So organic channels are your social media following, your SEO efforts, search engine optimization efforts, and the general content that's attached to that. The final channel we'll talk about is paid. So this is any channel where you need to spend money to promote your product to a customer. So that could be Google ads, that could mean Meta ads, that could mean working with a PR company or working with an influencer that helps promote your product. So anything that you have to pay for, basically. Now we're gonna get more specific into tactics, but there's a very important element to gluing this acquisition strategy, and that's all about being able to understand timelines and resources. So timelines is, you have an idea, you have these elements that we've just spoken about. You now need to deploy that into a timeline, right? Because a strategy without a timeline is just a bunch of random ideas. There needs to be some form of a roadmap that helps you or guides you into the end goal of acquiring more customers. And then in terms of resource, there's two sides to it. One is there's a couple of elements to when we talk about resource. That could mean, do I have the right skill currently to deploy this strategy? Do I need to hire people or use external vendors or agencies? Do I have the right budget and have my stakeholders approve that budget? Because acquisition, you'll find out soon, has a lot to do with paid channels, and you need money, essentially. Part of it could mean your go-to-market strategy. How are you going to initially make that launch if you're a new business? Seasonality as well, right? So seasonality, any other specific season throughout the year where your customers are more likely to buy from you, you got to keep that in mind and implement that within your strategy. So again, timelines and resources, you want to use both those elements to glue your strategy together. And then the execution comes after. All right, so now let's actually zoom into effective acquisition channels and tactics. So in terms of paid, the typical channels you'll use, Google search, Facebook ads. Very likely you need PR, right? It solidifies your social proof, especially if you're a newer business and a lot of customers don't know who you are yet. Being able to be promoted by a media publisher that is more well-known and respected eases that friction point that a customer has if they don't know your brand yet. Display advertising, as mentioned earlier, working with influencers within your space. If it's a B2C model that doesn't quite work with individual influencers, you can partner up with, you can do affiliate marketing, which is working with publishers, as mentioned, to help promote your product. Or it could mean more of a B2B player partnering up with other businesses within your space, which is actually really interesting tactic for a B2C model, partnering up with other businesses that are within your ecosystem as a business category. So next is organic channels. So social media channels, believe it or not, is still a powerful lever for acquisition. The only caveat is that a lot of these social media platforms, your organic reach is a lot lower, although that's more so for Instagram, because the attention is a lot on TikTok right now as of 2024. I would explore using TikTok as a potential growth channel. Another lever you might have is webinars, doing online webinars that can then educate your customers about your product, and then eventually funneling them onto an email automation campaign that gets them to actually sign up for the product. And then part of that could entail brochures or reports about that specific industry or benefits of using your product, right? There's that value exchange happening. You educate your prospects about what you do as a business, how they can benefit. And you can tie some of the stuff you talk about. Remember, if you at the beginning of the video, I mentioned all about their pain points, their wants and needs. You can start to connect those to the lead magnet that you provide, or the brochure, or the report, in exchange for their email address, and then create an email automation campaign to hopefully get them to actually sign up for the product, right? You can follow up with them post. You now turn the prospects you gain from your organic channels into owned channels, right? Which is your CRM, or customer relationship management tool, which is your email list. So let's talk about owned channels. So owned channels is your website, your mobile app, email marketing list, If you've got their number, I guess SMS is another way you can acquire customers or reacquire or re-engage your customers, and push notifications. Right? If you're a B2C subscription-based mobile app, for example, you might have a freemium model where a user signs up and it's free, but you want them to actually be a paid customer, so you can potentially use push notifications to slowly push them onto becoming a paid customer. And then loyalty programs. So a lot of businesses do this, right? Amazon is technically free in terms of being on the platform, apart from buying products, but they also have Amazon Prime, and that's a form of loyalty program. That is in many ways an acquisition channel in itself, because it benefits the customers and you can communicate through a different medium or a different positioning when you have a different way of the customer experiencing your product or service. I'm just going to mention some offline channels as well. Public relations, event, whether that's online event or events as well. You can create an event, advertise it using Facebook ads or any other social media channel or through Eventbrite. Billboards, radio, print. When we talk about print, it could either be a direct mail, it could be a magazine or an ad placement on a newspaper. The only caveat with using offline channels is that you might get an uplift of increasing customers' revenue, but it's hard to tie that or attribute that analysis back to some of these offline channels without making this video too complicated, unless you have a very advanced marketing mix modeling tool that helps you understand incremental uplifts in your conversions. It's very difficult to do. You could use unique links or unique codes as a way to attribute to that specific channel. So let's say some newspapers do this, right? Let's say a business like Subway, they might have an offer and there's a code that you need to use, which you then apply when you're checking out. And that code is data passed back onto Subway, and they can attribute that code is actually specifically for newspaper ads. There's lots of things we talk about in this video, from strategy. We briefly talked about channels and tactics. You now need to formalize all those things together, right? So you've got all these different pieces, and the challenge is now piecing them together, and the execution bit, which is it's probably for an entirely different video. When you talk about strategy, it's such a ethereal phrase that it could mean different things to different people. But for me, a strategy is just a roadmap to your end goal, whereas a plan are the individual checkpoints to help you understand where you are currently in terms of progressing towards your end goal. So just think of it as a guideline. And that's the reason why I mentioned earlier in the video about having timelines, because you're able to almost understand how we're progressing and how close you are to getting or reaching your end goal, which is acquiring more customers. I can't give you a formal strategy. I can give you the elements, but because every business is so nuanced and it has different dynamics to it, you're going to have to formalize it yourself. But in terms of, I want to talk about, this wasn't originally part of the video, but I want to talk about short-term and long-term strategies. So when you think about strategy, most people think long-term, this is our 1-year goal or 2-year goal. I'm not a big fan of those because there's so many external variables that can happen in the economy or even in the business, or people in the company moving to different departments or people leaving. I'm a lot more biased towards focusing on short-term strategies, but then backed up with a long-term strategy. So short-term strategy, practically these are things that you can action quite immediately within weeks, maybe even days. So you can start to acquire data to see if your overall strategy may or may not work. So a lot of acquisition, like I said earlier, goes down to paid advertising. So I think that's a low-hanging fruit. I think if you can prioritize that as a business, you can easily acquire customers. And then also part of that is email marketing, right? So now you're acquiring customers. How can you use email marketing to then use your current customers to promote your product or service as a B2C business? In terms of long-term, I think that's when you start to think more omni-channel, right? You start to think of different teams within a company, and it's a lot more difficult. I think really formalizing an omni-channel strategy, it needs to be cross-functional, but there needs to be someone who does orchestrate it. I'm going to read out some concepts for long-term strategy. So retargeting campaigns in your performance marketing or email marketing campaigns, brand-driven content marketing. With SEO, we want to be the leader in your business category. It's a very important long-term strategy for acquiring customers and more market share. You can think about SMS marketing, although it's quite expensive. We can also explore offline marketing channels. And then this is more on the product side. This is beyond marketing now. You want to think about product expansion or business expansion, right? So product expansion could mean, hey, we've noticed that a lot of people buy this specific product category from us. Is there a way we can expand that onto another category that's relevant or correlates to this clearly winning product category? So you can start to use the data to acquire more potential customers with what's currently working for you as a business. We can't talk about an acquisition strategy if we're not able to understand data. So I think we'll close off the video with that. With data, we need to understand what works and what isn't working. So there's really a 3-stage process to this. It's being able to acquire the data, being able to analyze the data, and then finally being able to derive actionable insights from the data, which is quite simple, but sometimes a lot more difficult to implement and execute. But as a B2C business, there's only a few metrics that you'll really care about. And we're going to talk about some of those now. And what I'll do is I'll mention some of these metrics, right? So revenue, clearly as a business, that's very important. Total users, total active customers, average revenue per user, churn rate, which is how many people leave your product compared to what it was the previous period, customer acquisition cost, or CAC, or CPA, cost per acquisition, CLV, or customer lifetime value, LTV, same exact thing, lifetime value. And then retention. Potentially as a B2C business, you'll really care about that, but that's outside of acquisition. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a screen share right now, and we can talk about how we can lay this out and how can we understand what's working, what isn't. Let's just imagine we're Netflix, we're a B2C subscription-based company. So imagine we're Netflix, we're looking at the past 3 months worth of data. So you see January, February, and March, and we can see how much we spent in terms of marketing, how many active subscribers we have currently. So these are total subscribers we have within the business. How many subscribers we've gained for that specific month. So for January, for example, we've gained 250, and then total subscribers lost, column E, that's how many subscribers we've actually lost in that month. And then revenue, churn rate. So remember, churn rate is simply how many people we've lost in comparison to our total active subscribers. So clearly, if we have 1,000 total subscribers and we lost 100 is 10% of 1,000, that's our churn rate, which is 10%. And then ARPU, average revenue per user. So that's simply what is our total revenue, which is 1,190. Divide that by your total active subscribers. So basically, this is how much each customer you have, how much revenue you have for all of your active subscribers. And then lifetime value. So this is an interesting one for a B2C. This is a very important metric as well. You might hear the acronym LTV, so I'll put that there. LTV is simply you're projecting how much revenue can we gain from this customer throughout their whole lifetime. And it's always a forecast, right? Because how can you really predict the whole lifetime of a customer, right? So you can get average numbers. So in this case, the way we're going to do the formula that you will use is, so if you look at the formula that I use for LTV, and this is the most simplest formula you can use, it's simply your average revenue per user, multiply that by a new formula, parentheses 1, divided by your churn rate, which is 10%. And whatever number shows up, that's a forecast of how much lifetime value your customer is going to have. So this is telling us for Netflix, in this case, for January, a lifetime value of our customer is £100. And then CAC, customer acquisition cost for new subscribers, is £400. That is simply dividing our total marketing spend by the total subscribers we've gained. So if we look at the formula, marketing spend divided by 250, that's £400. So we're paying £400 for every new customers we're gaining. Cool. If you want to mess around with this sheet, there's going to be a link in the description below. So if you enjoyed the video, I have a more formal video of an omni-channel strategy that I deployed for a B2C business last year. I will leave that video link in the description below. Thank you for watching. Till next time. Peace.